Welcome into the latest edition of New England Hockey Journal's RinkWise Podcast. I'm your host, Evan Marinofsky, joined as always by Patrick Donnelly. Patrick, what's up?
Not much, enjoying the nice weather, getting through baseball season.
Yeah, the nice weather can't be better than that. And we have a troubling trend here, Pat. 2 of the last 3 podcasts now are with a hockey parent, a parent of kids that we write about. This is dangerous here. Today we are joined by the head boys coach at Rivers, head instructor at Dream Big Hockey Stars, played at BU from 1999 to 2003, and played close to 300 games for the Philadelphia Flyers, New York Islanders, Phoenix Coyotes, and Atlanta Thrashers. That'd be Freddy Meyer. Freddy, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on. You and I have had many conversations in the rinks. We've been trying to get this set up for a while, so it is nice to have it finally happen. Is there an off season for you, or this is not an off season?
I think it's just I put on a different hat. I feel like from coaching in the wintertime, high school youth, and I put in my dream big hat kind of kicks on in the spring and summer. That you're doing more 3-on-3 skills and more say development type stuff.
Do you coach anything else at Rivers aside from hockey, or just hockey?
I do not. The last couple of years I've done middle school baseball. This year I was kind of, as I was calling myself, I was a lefty in the bullpen. They needed to pull me in, pinched to fill in for a coach that might have been out for a day or something. But overall, we have like an equipment room on campus, so I help out in there in the afternoons. And if kids need stuff before their practices, I'm kind of their go-to guy.
Yeah, so you'd be like the first base coach, would that be, or what would be like the
My middle school baseball experience, my middle school coaching resume? Is that what you're asking about?
Yes, that's why you're on the show. We don't care about hockey.
It was, I would say, a little bit of a jack of all trades, but we specialized in our wiffle ball careers during our middle school practices last year, and I think at the end of the day, it's about kids having fun. So there's some formation of baseball, and the kids are having a smile, and they don't go home and complain to mom and dad. We've kind of hit a home run.
My Pat, you could probably test this too. My athletic belief is that I could play professional wiffle ball. I fully 100% believe I could play pro wiffle ball. No doubt.
Guys that are throwing 10 miles an hour and they curve like craziness.
Oh, you should see my knuckleball. It is just
there's no greater feeling like with your buddies, either making someone look silly with a pitch or pimping a home run, because the way it comes off a bat in backyard wiffle ball just feels so different.
Chef's kiss. It's perfect. But anyway, Freddie, you had a very successful year this year. Your boys team went all the way to the small school championship. You guys had a dramatic increase in wins. I know we've talked about this, off the record and just in ranks and stuff, but were you surprised that you guys had as much success you had this year, or not really?
Yeah, I think going into the year, obviously, we're pretty young on paper. And so you were, whenever young kids have to make an adjustment playing against older kids, you're not sure how that's exactly going to align. I liked our depth. I liked our team going into the year. But in the prep world, you kind of know how other teams are looking, but it's not as clear as the NHL trade deadline or, July 1st when you know what other teams are getting. So I think that's kind of the fun of it, though, is kind of like showing up, we'll say November 15th, and kind of putting the kids together and kind of seeing how high you can climb.
Yeah, the prep trade deadline would be something that'd be incredible if it was pulling kids from different schools. That I think go over great. And it's interesting because obviously your own kids, Freddie and Carter, you've coached forever, but a lot of other junior Eagles are on that team that you've coached in years past and kind of developed. How cool was it to sort of see those kids kind of come to fruition in high school a bit?
Yeah, I would say obviously with the 2009s that I've coached kind of the last 5 or 6 years and had the most, touch time with in terms of practice reps and game reps. And, I think I've always said to all the kids that I've coached, it's not so much about what you can do today, but, what is this going to look like in 3-4 years? I think that's where, for me, it was those messagings and what we've worked on structurally. And, and obviously they're very good players, good athletes, smart kids. So when you kind of put that all together, it was fun to watch them kind of step into their own and have success in their own way. And obviously going into it, I wasn't sure. Right? You got 14-year-olds playing against 19-year-olds. It's a big step and a big development curve from maturity and physicality standpoint. But I think once they kind of figured out what that landscape was and how to play it that pace at that level, you could kind of see their confidence grow and their eyes kind of light up like, oh, I can do this, and I can find success at it.
How much of that is just kind of being young and maybe not even realizing that? Like, did they realize kind of the '09s, like Sam Pandolfo and Finn Sears and Carter Meyer? Like, did they understand kind of what they were going up against, or was it kind of just, hey, it's just another hockey game?
Well, I mean, I think, you can look at probably, you probably know the statistics better than I do, of even at the NHL level, where you're kind of like your first Stanley Cup run, you have this, magical run. And then your second year, your third year, it gets a little bit harder because your expectations go through the roof. And I think even for them, like, they were excited to be on a high school team. They were excited to be around our seniors and our captains and kind of take in, I guess, what we embody as our culture at Rivers. And I think they were pretty naive to the whole process. And I think for them going in it, and was just, they're excited to be a part of it, and their roles just kind of gradually increased, and like I said, they kind of, their eyeballs started to open up even more, and they realized that they could play at this level and have success at it. But I don't think going into it, any of them, I could be wrong. I don't want to speak for them, but we're like, oh, I'm gonna get X. I think it was more of like, I'm excited for this experience. I get to play with older kids. I get to learn from some, older kids that I've watched, behind the glass the last couple of years on campus. And, this is gonna be cool to be part of the culture that's at Rivers Ice Hockey.
With that crew of Carter, Finn, Sam, I know obviously you mentioned you've worked with them for a long time. How important were like skills development with those kids? Because all of them seem to possess really good skill, high IQs. Like, what kind of development did they go through over the last bunch of years with you and other coaches, obviously, that kind of made them that way?
No, and it wasn't like those three specifically, right? I would just
Of
say
course.
they've been very fortunate to have, Jay Pandolfo, obviously being Sammy's dad, has been around a ton as well. And I there's probably not there's not too many kids in the country or the world that can say that they've had a couple guys that played in the NHL kind of foster their development through their, Squirts, Mike Squirts, Pee Wee's Bantam age group. And I think they're all highly athletic. I think they're highly intelligent hockey players. And, they've kind of been able to take all these bits and pieces over the years and kind of put them together. And I think that was exciting for me, as, I guess, what I would consider myself more of a development guy than a coach, where that's like the ultimate like gratification for me. And it's not so much strictly skill work. I think it's more about like processing the game at a high level, and knowing how to play the game at the high level. And that goes back to what I said a little bit ago about, like, it's not about today. Like, I know you can beat this guy one-on-one today, but like, if you're playing against a 19-year-old and he weighs 200 pounds, like, that move's not going to work. You need to do this. So I think a lot of the terminology, a lot of, uh, practice reps that we've had as an Eagles team collectively. And like I said, not just with those three, like, but I think those three obviously, you know, had a great year, and I took a huge step for their development.
When did that become big for you? Development and skill development over kind of just being I don't want to say a regular coach, but when did that emphasis become big with you? Was it when you were in the NHL? Was it after? Like, when did that become big?
I think once I finished playing pro hockey, my last year was in Sweden. We came back to the greater Boston area, and it was kind of like, what's my next step? Um, and so for me, I started Dream Big Hockey Stars, and I started working in the American League as an assistant coach. And a lot of the American League assistant coach stuff is more about player development than really like coaching, I would call it. And that's, I would say that's kind of my sweet spot in terms of what I enjoy most. I think when you can tell a kid how to do something, or how to use the net, or how to make a breakout pass, or how to protect a puck, and then they go in a game and they do it, and they have success doing it, like, that's really gratifying on my end. And I think, like, that's been a big piece of it. I think, looking at our Eagles team, if you watch them afar, you might be like, oh my God, there's so much structure, and these guys do so many, they must have like incredible systems. And truth be told, like, we don't really have systems. We've instilled like fundamentals and have the kids play the right way and understand angles and stick positions, how to support each other and how to communicate, and a lot of the higher end details that happen at the NHL level. And then, an NHL coach is adding all this structure into it too. So now you've got superstars. And so that's been fun, I'd say for me is coming through with this group of kids. And like I said, building fundamentals at a very basic level that you might do at a hockey camp with a little kid. How do you take an angle? Now you take that angle and you put it into a high school game and you have your stick in the right spot and you turn the puck over, but now you have the ability to finish that play as well.
That's so interesting, Pat. So funny story, how Freddie and I met. We met last year at the Foxborough Summer League, and because this goes back to you mentioned an interesting thing, Freddie, about being done with your career and figuring out what to do next. And we were talking, and you were like, asking me about my job, and you're like, so like, what are you gonna do in 5 years? And I was like, oh, I haven't thought that far ahead. I don't know what I'm gonna do in 5 years. I was like, I left there being like, what am I be? What will I be doing in 5 years? So that's interesting. Did you know, when you were playing, you knew you wanted to get into coaching, Freddie, or was it
Honestly,
kind of
I did.
random?
I feel like just as you just mentioned, I think we as humans, we live such in the moment, right? And you're kind of
Mhm.
like often in the moment. I like what I'm doing. This is really cool. And I think, if you talk to a lot of professional athletes, like you're just in the moment and you're playing and that's all your focus is on like nutrition and work ethic and compete and like doing your best. And you're not really focused on like, all right, like what am I going to be doing in 3 years? Like, for me, my career, I would say ended way before I thought it was going to via concussion. So I kind of like got hit in the face with this thing. And it was like, all right, what am I going to do now? I've said this before and my wife always gets a kick out of it, but she was kind of like, why are you looking in things outside of hockey? Like you've done this your whole life, you've played at a high level, like you love kids. Like why are you chasing, commercial real estate or some other, I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe I'd be good at that. So I always give her some credit for saying like, no, like pursue hockey. Like, why would you not? And I've honestly, I've loved it. And I think, like I said, the big thing for me is the development piece of it. Like, yeah, I'm a coach. I can tell you where to go and how to get there. But I think that, like I said, from doing kids that are learning how to skate to, NHLers that want to learn how to, get reps in the summer. Like, I think it's fun helping those guys develop at whatever level they're at. And for me, it's like you receive an email or you receive a phone call, you bumps into someone a few years later and bam, like they're able to put it to use. I would even say Justin Graff, as an example, obviously plays for us here at Rivers. I've known the Graffs, I would say 8 years. It's probably been 10 years and had an opportunity to work with Colin, his older brother that recently signed in San Jose and played some NHL games after his Quinnipiac season. And obviously now having Justin as a to be junior, like seeing him through kind of his like major development years. And I don't work with him now as I did 5 years ago, but you had a piece of that development and like you see things that you've talked to him about over the years that he's doing. Those are cool moments as a coach and as a, I guess a mentor to all these kids in a way too.
Pat, do you have anything?
Yeah, it's sort of, looking at it through the lens of prep and, being like a huge proponent of development. What's sort of the balancing act you have to like try to play mid-season with working in skill development, player development in your practices, but also game planning? Some people I've talked to, you get long in the tooth in the season, kids are getting banged up. You got to start worrying about game planning and, there's not as much time for skill development later in the season. So how's that sort of balanced for you?
I would say from my philosophy, we do limited game planning. Like from a Monday through Friday window wise, obviously we play a lot of Wednesdays and Saturdays. So as you mentioned, you don't get a ton of reps. You go on Monday,
Mhm.
Tuesday. Kids are a little, maybe tired or banged up. So Thursday's a little bit lighter. Then you practice again and then you play Saturday. So, but a lot of it for me is once again, it's about the development piece where my goal is to get these guys, they're all doing their stuff from the summer and the fall. And then I get them, we'll say November 15th, like my job in a way, and the way I look at it is like, I got you here November 15th. Like how high can I get you to climb as a player? And it's a lot of it's like playing the game the right way. So we do say practice wise is more on like, up tempo, fast pace, compete hard, a lot of small area games where you're working on skill development and puck protection and touches. And I'd love to try to do as many complicated drills as we can from a flow standpoint. So kids have to think like they have to figure
Mhm.
out, if I'm a point A to get to point B, like how do I get to D, all the way up. And so I think that's for me is if you looked at my practice plans, that's what it's more about. Like, did we down the stretch when now we're getting into the playoffs, so we need to win a few games down the stretch. Like, all right, let's do a little bit more game planning or strategic stuff on certain teams we're playing. But truthfully, for 95% of the year, it was all about like, fast reps, high compete, small area games. And then obviously special teams is important, right? So you got to work on your power play. But overall, it was more about, making kids better players. And I look at if the only league I feel like it should be strictly about winning games is in the NHL, right? If you're not coaching in the NHL, like every other step along the way should be about player development. And I think like with that mindset, like kids are able to like continually get better. If you're only worried about winning, then yes, all you're doing is game planning for your next game. And you're probably missing out on moments where you're affecting some kids' development. And I really do believe in that. I think too many of our coaches at the high school level, even at the college level, like their job, you know, is reflective if they win or lose. I get it. So there is an element of needing to win. But unfortunately, like, yeah, you might be winning, but your kids aren't developing and they're not going to reach their goal of, say, playing in the NHL if you're a college coach. And so it's a fine line that you walk as a coach. But I always, even when I was doing the tier 3 junior thing for 6 years with East Coast Wizards, it was like, we used to stink in September and October. But then by the time January rolled around and kids were getting better, teams didn't want to play us. And I think for me, that's more gratifying than winning in September because we got really good structure and our players know where they need to be on the ice. Like let's build in all these fundamentals. And then down the stretch, if we need to do that, now we've added something else to that recipe.
So you feel like like a lot of coaches prior to the NHL kind of miss that, you think?
Yeah. And I don't want to I guess, put it out there that they shouldn't try to win.
No, of course.
For me, the pattern is let's develop to win versus just to win. And I think that's an important piece. And I like teaching kids the right way to play. And you got to have a little bit of a longer leash with certain guys because they're going to make mistakes. If you are on a breakout and you want the D to look for the center and they go D to D to the center and they don't quite make that pass to the center, the centerman's on the right spot and they don't quite make that pass, like that puck could turn over and end up in the back of your net. But for me, like if you give the kid the confidence to make that play versus just going off the glass and out, like over the course of time, he's going to become more confident. He's able to make that play. And then you're going to leave your zone cleaner than if he's just shooting it off the glass and out. So I think it's trying to find that balance. And I know there'll be coaches listening that, don't like that, but I do. I mean, at the youth ages, like besides the last couple of minutes of a game, like it should all be about like development and letting these kids play and make mistakes and, having the freedom to like try stuff and enjoy the game has been a big message on my end.
Do you want to skate fast? For 50 years, Laura Stam instructors have taught youth players to pros how to skate correctly, powerfully, and fast. Players who attend Laura Stam power skating programs learn how to skate fast by learning how to execute every maneuver in hockey. They become powerful, stable, efficient, and explosively fast skaters. If you can't wait for a clinic, join our subscription skills video service, and we'll show you the skills taught at our clinics in an easy-to-use video format with training plans to guide your training. Register or subscribe now at laurastam.com. That's LauraStamm.com. You can learn to skate fast.
Hi, I'm Rachel Hedden, head girls lacrosse coach at the Frederick Gunn School, an independent high school in Connecticut. We play in one of the most competitive prep school leagues and place athletes at top college programs. To learn more, visit gogun.org. That's GOGUNN.org.
Become a Raven at Portsmouth Abbey School, a premier Benedictine boarding and day school for grades 9 through 12 located on Rhode Island's Classic Coast. Join an independent, co-educational community that embraces your uniqueness and welcomes you as no other school can. The Abbey prepares you for your future by nurturing your talents, cultivating your curiosity, and helping you grow in knowledge and grace. With over 40 athletic programs and 25 student-run clubs and organizations, you will build friendships that will last a lifetime and discover passions you didn't know you had. Portsmouth Abbey School, something greater starts here. Visit us online at portsmouthabbey.org. or call 401-643-2000.
Well, I remember when we talked back in the winter, you mentioned with the 309s we mentioned and Evan Alden on defense, like they're going to make mistakes. you got to let them make mistakes. You know, they're young, they're going to get pressured into bad passes and stuff. And it comes down to sort of the ability to come back from that mistake that kind of defines who they are as players. I think that's interesting. And you know, it's funny with skill development. I feel like in the last 10 to 15 years, it's become a lot bigger. Do you see any new trends in skill development that are coming to the forefront? New things you're liking, seeing?
I guess I think Instagram is affecting a lot of skill development coaches, and I think in a bad way.
Okay.
For me, it's very like basic oriented. And I think you need to get really good at the basics and then you can become a good hockey player. Like being able to stick handle a million miles an hour around a bunch of objects on the ice, like doesn't correlate to being able to protect the puck in the offensive zone and make the right hockey play. And I think the power of Instagram is everyone's, it's all clicks and likes. And I think too often the time we're chasing clicks and likes versus actually like old school development that probably has gone on for hundreds of years at different levels. And I think for me, like from a programmatic standpoint, it's a lot about, like I said, the basics of tape to tape passes, protecting pucks, communication, awareness on the ice of where you're at, how to use the net as a defenseman, understanding like how to break certain forechecks, how to get through certain, different scenarios. And I think like trying to really teach the game at a basic, yet those basics are able to equate to like a higher level processing. And at the end of the day, I think those are super important. But unfortunately, if I film a D wheeling the net on a breakout, it doesn't get as many likes on Instagram versus, a kid that's jumping over the net into a backflip and then, toe dragging and putting it top shelf. Like it's just unfortunate that it's that way. And so, but for me, like skill development is about like mastering the basics and then adding layers onto that.
Is that like with the Michigan going viral, like that being a
I think
move that
it's a prime example, right? And nowadays, like, I mean, the sticks are incredible. The athleticism and the athletes playing this game are incredible. So they're able to do things that I guess as a player growing up in the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s, like you never even like thought about trying, right? So hats off to some of these kids and how talented they are. I just would, caution how many guys are doing the Michigan, at the NHL level. So don't spend a lot of time on that. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's where it can be confusing to kids on what they're seeing online. What they see Trevor Zegers do is masterful, right? But like, there's one of those guys in the world, and so it's kind of like a little bit for me is like, try to play the game the right way. And yeah, if you can do the Michigan mid game, but you're also playing the right way, like, okay, we're okay with that. But I think at the end of the day, it's like you need to master the basics, and social media is cool, but we shouldn't be coaching for social media.
Yeah. There was a montage of, Gustav Forsling's defensive highlights from the first few rounds of the playoffs. And Evan sent it to me. He's like, I'd much rather watch this than the 25th Michigan of the season.
I would.
Yeah.
I know that the Michigan is sexy and it's cool. And
Yeah.
I always see kids trying it at different fall events and, even during the prep season, you see it sometimes. And, it's definitely something that like, oh, if you hit it, it's cool. But I just like the Gustav Forsling defensive highlights are like, sometimes I'll do like Brandon Carlo defensive highlights on YouTube or Patrice Bergeron defensive highlights. Like I would much rather watch that. I would.
There's a Bergeron one that's like 25 minutes. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. It's amazing.
And but unfortunately, like those get less likes, right? So, but like that's what I mean. My junior team I had, I don't know, probably one of my first years. I was the motto was like, what would Bergeron do? And it's like, I wish more guys would appreciate his type of game in terms of his attention to detail and really how basic it was, right? Like it's not complicated. It's like hockey sense, it's hard work, it's commitment to defense. And obviously he is a super talented player, right? He's get drafted high somewhere in the first round. Like he was a very good hockey player, but he was also, his attention to details was off the charts. And I think if younger players are watching the NHL, like that's my recommendation. Like watch those guys, or even a Brad Marchand, right? Like his ability to protect the puck and work and compete and stick lift and like those are all like really small details that make you a really good player. And if you can do those, like now you're going to set yourself up for success. And probably a little bit is, I look at my own career, a little bit through a microscope and, like in theory, I probably shouldn't have made it. Undersized defenseman in the late 90s where it was more about big guys that could clutch and grab, and some early rule changes in 04, 05 lockout, like enabled it to be a little bit cleaner. But like for me, it was just like trying to play the game really hard. And like, I'm 5'9" I'll say, like I had to outcompete everybody times two. And I think like with some skill and outcompete, like now you've set yourself up. And so that's kind of my messaging to my own kids and other kids that I, come across in a local rink.
When you were developing coming up through the, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 up to college, like, do you think your path would have been different now? Or how would it have been different?
Um, I honestly don't think so. Like, I think for me, I was fortunate enough, lucky enough, someone saw me along the way in the backwoods of New Hampshire. That I was invited to play at the national program for the first 2 years of the program. And, I think like nowadays, if I was hopefully that same player, I'd have that same opportunity. And back then there was no, internet and where everything was right in your face. And so my parents and I guess took a little bit of a risk to go to the national program, but I look back on that, like, it was probably the best decision we could have made as a family. And, even when you get there, you don't really know what you're up against. You didn't really know what, you knew some kids from Michigan that you've played with in the summer, but you didn't know kids from Minnesota and some of these other locations that they were coming from. And I think getting there and same way you get there and then you kind of figure out where you're at. And then obviously for me going from there to BU, like, I think that I don't think I would have changed much if I were to if I was going through it in 2024, to be honest with you.
Because you mentioned like, when you got to the NHL, outcompeting everybody, physicality, playing big, all that stuff. Do you think if you were coming up now, it would be a similar identity?
I think the only thing I would probably scale back is I always played super physical. Hence I took a lot of penalties in high school and college. I'd scaled back in pro, but I like part of my game was like out competing and being out physical and being more physical than my competition. Right. And in my eyes, it was a little bit like, I'm going to try to make this guy quit. And if I can make this guy quit, I'm going to create, say, more space for myself or make my life easier as a defenseman. And obviously with my career ended with concussions, I have had some flashback of like, maybe I shouldn't have tried to hit as many guys that did. Like, have I like kind of like given myself some of these issues along the way? But I enjoyed that element of the game. I think it got me into games. It kept me like, it kind of was my identity that I had to kind of run with. But that would be probably the only thing I would change. And I would think if I was going up now, like I'd probably a little bit more talented than I was like offensively. I don't think I was terrible, but I feel like now, everyone's talented, it seems like, because they're on the ice more and the sticks are better and the puck slide better. And I don't know, the technology is a lot better that would have, put you in a little bit better spot offensively. But I think at the end of the day, it's more about like compete level work ethic and, trying to be the hardest worker on the ice and create space for yourself.
That's so interesting with the changes in time and stuff like that. You mentioned playing against Bergeron. Who were some of the guys you went up against that were the hardest to play, smartest, that people maybe don't think about as much?
Who did the Providence Bruins lose to in the 04-05 Calder Cup playoffs?
Good question. I don't remember.
Was Patrice Bergeron on that team would be the follow-up.
I don't remember. Was he?
I'm young for this. This is like an old guy question for you. They lost.
Pat and I are both. I'm a 99. Pat's a 2000. So we are like, this is way before my time.
But I guess where I was going with that is, it's actually interesting for you guys both as we'll call you hockey gurus. I was gonna say hockey dorks, but might not be a good connotation.
I'll take it.
Hockey 04-05. Look at those American Hockey League rosters, and like Providence Bruins obviously had Patrice Bergeron at, like essentially his first year out pro. You have like Jason Spezza's in Binghamton. You have like the Stahl brothers and they were in Lowell, I think, because that was Carolina's team. But anyways, we had a good team in Philly, obviously too. And I think that year we had obviously a good run. We ended up winning the Calder Cup in Philly. But we had a little bit of a gauntlet of teams that we had to get through with a bunch of guys that became, probably Hall of Famers for most of them. So it was kind of a cool journey on that Philadelphia Phantoms team back in 04, 05.
Yeah, because that kind of fell right in line with the '03 draft too, where, people say it's one of the best, if not the best draft ever.
Yeah, no, that would be, I think, Bergeron, Stahl.
Yeah.
I think who else
I think
was
Pavelski might have still been in school, but that whole crowd.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Yeah, that draft was nuts. But so Bergeron was just going up against him, and you went up against him in the NHL too.
All right, yeah. So I obviously played against him, say in the minors, right? Which was fine. You knew who he was, like where he got drafted. Like, all right, like, and that's a guy I think about through those playoffs. Like, I got to try to make this guy quit, right? Like, I gotta like, I'm a little bit older than he is, maybe a little bit more seasoned. Like, I need to hammer this guy every time I could. So those that was a fun experience. I think I played against him, obviously, a few different stops where I was in Philly or Long Island, and he was obviously in Boston. I would say those guys, I think being in Philly, you played Pittsburgh quite a bit with Crosby and Malkin and kind of their run there in the mid 2000s, which was pretty powerful. Ovechkin being in Washington, I always felt like I played my offside. I'm a lefty, so I played the right side, and Ovechkin plays the left wing. And like at that time of his career, like same way 06, 07, 08, like he wanted to play one-on-one, right? So, one of my, I guess, my superpowers was my skating ability. So like I could skate with anybody, maybe not Connor McDavid, but I'd say I could skate with anybody at that time. And so like I had those are always fun games for me when you're playing against, like, all right, this guy's really good and he's going to make you look stupid if you're not really locked in. And, but it was always a fun challenge. If he gets the puck, he winds it up coming out of his D zone, and it's me and him essentially one-on-one, and you have to know where your stick should be and where your angle should be. And like same way, like playing physical on guys like him, even though he's, on paper bigger and stronger than I am, like, using your body when he's not expecting it to, knock him off pucks. And I'm trying to think who else was kind of the superheroes back in the day. Patrick Kane obviously was in Chicago, but we didn't, being in the East, you don't play them as much as some of those other guys that were, local. Or like I said, Jason Spezza in Ottawa, and they had Daniel Alfredsson obviously in Ottawa. Funny story, I hit Spezza one night in center ice up in Ottawa, like clean hit, D to D, kind of a buddy pass, to the center. And as Long Island, we'd step up as a left defenseman, and I hit him, and then Alfredsson came at me like he wanted to fight. And I was, I guess being my size, I didn't feel like I needed to fight anybody, to be honest with you. Like, I'm the smallest guy on the ice. I would knock you down. Like, that's more on you. That's not on me. So anyways, yeah, I've had, obviously it was an incredible run. Nothing that I ever expected. Like you said, would I change anything that happened back then to now? Like, no, I had a pretty cool hockey experience as a kid growing up, like I said, in the middle of New Hampshire, and finding a way to climb to the NHL.
Yeah. No, you were definitely very physical back in the day. You mentioned concussions. That seems like something that now, I feel like in the mid 2010s or early 2010s, there was a large, like when I was coming up, I remember the Messier Project helmets. There were a lot of steps taken to try and limit concussions and hits from behind and things like that. I imagine that's a development that you've enjoyed seeing be implemented in hockey for your own kids now coming up too.
Yeah, I think it's, obviously I always say to kids, you got one brain, right? Like, don't mess around with that thing. And that was kind of my messaging to myself when I kind of had back-to-back concussions in Atlanta and in Sweden that I finally hung them up. And I think it's cool that there's more data on the streets. They've obviously studied some brains and CTE and all the long-term effects that are out there. And, I would say to anyone listening or any kids out there, the game is obviously super fast and faster than it was when I was playing, but I think it's a cleaner brand of hockey where there's less guys taking runs and hitting guys from behind, and hopefully the education continues to develop and grow and, just become safer and safer. Although, I would say to anyone, like, that's not going to stop concussions, obviously, right? Like, a lot of times concussions happen from more randomness than intent. I think, learning how to play the game with your head up, understanding where everybody else is on the ice to kind of create a better picture in your brain. So you always put yourself in good spots and hope that the guys you're playing with play the game the right way. So you're not hitting guys from behind and you're not cheap shotting and you're trying to play between the rules. So hopefully that continues, messaging continues to be out there and feeling like the game just continues to get safer.
Pat, you got anything?
No, I was sort of, when you mentioned how concussions are kind of more like random, just in the flow of the game, I just, what's popped into my head was, I remember reading something, it might have been in the Players Tribune by Mark Savard. It was kind of like, everybody thinks Matt Cook hit is what ended my career, but it was an innocent little bump into the boards from Matt Hunwick the following season. And that's when I knew I was done. So I just thought it was, interesting just that you mentioned that.
Yeah. I mean, that was, similar to me. I like I said, I had an issue in Atlanta and kind of collapsed on the ice, no big hit. And then, was out, had some symptoms for months afterwards and then got healthy and felt great and played 30 or so games in Sweden and felt unbelievable. And then literally around Christmas time in practice, just like bumped into a guy on a small area game. It was almost like the light switch went back off in terms of what I felt like the previous winter. And so that was the kind of the fear factor. But like, as Mark said, it's not, usually it's the big hit. You kind of, I don't know, you kind of see it and you feel it and you do it. It's not that you enjoy getting hit like that, but that's not the one. It's usually when your head's turning and you kind of get rotated a little bit with that, happens inside the brain that causes those concussions. So, I think as a parent, you don't want to see anybody get hurt. You don't want to see your own kids get hurt, but obviously, there's risk involved, right? Like it's, if you're playing competitive sports at the very least, a high school level, like there's going to be dangers, and that's in football, that's in hockey, that's in heading balls in soccer, that's colliding with somebody in a field hockey game, right? So there's no safeness. And I think it's, you learn so many lessons from sports that I think they're super powerful and super valuable that there's not a reason to pull your kid out of a sports because you're fear of concussions. Like you could get hit walking across the street to go to Dunkin' Donuts, or you get in a car accident and get a concussion. So I think teaching the proper way to play and obviously working on, total body strengthening with shoulders and necks and all that stuff can help limit potential repetitive injuries.
For over 20 years, Eric Nate's Euro Hockey has been helping hockey players of all ages develop their individual skills and improve on all aspects of their game. Through structured drills and innovative training equipment, Eric Nate's Euro Hockey's intense on-ice instruction challenges each student to be the best at their ability. Find a hockey clinic or summer camp that is right for you today at nateshockey.com. That's NATES hockey.com. Eric Nate's Euro Hockey, train to be the best.
Are you serious about playing your sport in college? Do you need a flexible education that allows you to maintain your practice and competition schedules while also preparing you to succeed at the next level? You should check out the University of Nebraska High School. UNHS is accredited and offers more than 100 online courses, including NCAA-approved courses to protect your academic eligibility. Students could earn a UNHS diploma or take a single course for transfer credit. Courses are college prep, self-paced, and available 24/7, 365. Enroll anytime and take up to a year to complete a course. Visit highschool.nebraska.edu today.
After that happened in Christmas time, when you were in Sweden, what were the next steps for you?
We were in Sweden for another, probably I think 2 months. Same way. I did a lot of acupuncture and chiropractor and massages and did all kinds of, alternative medicine type stuff that I could to try to get myself back to a good spot. Unfortunately, I never was able to kind of get back over that hump where I was comfortable enough to play. And so after, like I said, about 8 weeks of trying to get healthy, we finally flew back to Boston. And for me, it was, I guess the challenging part was, I think I was 31. So in theory, I'll say in my prime was the right way to describe that. But I still feel like my body felt really good. I could skate, I could shoot, I could do everything. But obviously my brain wasn't on the same page in terms of some of the symptoms I was dealing with. And, met with a neurologist back in Boston that I saw the previous year and kind of asked him, should I stop playing? He's like, I can't really answer that. That's kind of on you. And for me, it was a little bit of, I guess, a parenting moment where I think my boys were like 3 and 4 at the time. And for me, big emphasis on, I guess, the last 16 years of my life since having kids. It's kind of like, what's the next one look like? What is that going to do to me? Am I not going to be able to like be involved with their lives and their development? And that was kind of time I was like, I think I'm done. I kind of moved away from it, and I think the cool thing for me is I think it's really hard for professional athletes to like move on. But I think for me, being involved in hockey in so many different layers since retiring is like, kept me in the game. And that's why I think you see a lot of former players in whatever sport they were playing to be back involved, because same way, you got the camaraderie of the team and you're around the guys and you're helping kids out. And there's so many different levels to it that is rewarding. Although you're not on the ice scoring goals or shutting guys down and getting some credit for that stuff, you can help, I guess, from behind the scenes to help those kids, um, enjoy their moment.
Well, in some way, you're impacting more careers coaching and doing what you're doing now than when you were playing. I mean, you think about, you mentioned like a Justin Graff, watching him do things you taught him 5 years ago. Um, and I think there's probably a lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of gratification in that. It's interesting. You mentioned like talking to that neurologist back then. Were there a lot of other guys that you knew of playing in the NHL? Obviously, you don't name names, but like, were there other guys in the NHL who had similar head issues that kind of said, "No, I'm gonna keep playing and just kind of hope this goes away"?
I honestly, my honest opinion, like, I don't think it's like a rampant thing that sometimes you read that's out there. I think like certain guys that are fighting for a living, like, I'm not sure what those guys dealt with, although I know they dealt with a lot of stuff, right? Like, but a lot of those guys would bottle it in and they wouldn't like express it. They just knew like this was kind of their livelihood and what they had to keep doing. I think the era that I was playing in, there was definitely like, in terms of mouthpieces and helmets and protection, like, and the trainers were getting held to a higher and higher standard. I would think like, prior to, I don't know, I would say 2000, maybe there's a little bit more guys were looking the other way and trainers were looking the other way. But I would honestly say, in all the places I played, the trainers were really on board for health and wellness of their players. And they obviously toe a line of working for the team, but also working for the players. But I think at the end of the day, if you become a athletic trainer in most situations, like, you want the best thing for the player. And if you put a player back at risk when you know something, then you're not doing that. And so I would say, like, you can look at even Patrice Bergeron has had, knock on wood that he's healthy today, but obviously had concussions early in his career. And like some pretty bad ones, but the same way, I think he took the amount of time off that he felt like he needed to before he put himself back in danger. And I think for him, same way, like, there's a lot of rule changes, a lot of protocolities have changed during his career that, like, not just protected him, but protected all the guys. And I think, there's guys like that you see, but I don't think it's like a rampant thing where there's the guys hiding and popping Advil before every period just so they could survive it. My heart does go out to some of the guys that, have had or have fought for a living is kind of their way to make it to the top. And, you've seen some examples of guys that have passed away in the last handful of years. And I can only imagine what some of those guys have dealt with, with probably from concussions and from CTE and all the other stuff that comes along with that.
Absolutely. I want to end on this because this is I think this is a fun question and it should get a fun response. You have a unique position where you've coached your kids for a long time, but you're still a hockey parent. And I'm curious, what makes a good hockey parent? What what are some of the do's? What are some of the don'ts that you've noticed over the years? I'm curious your take on that.
It's a good question. How do how should I answer this? You know what I mean? What crowd am I trying to please? No, I would say this, and I'm not a foolproof that I've never, been a bad hockey parent, I would say. But I think overall, like, your job as parents is to, obviously you're paying the bill, right? So you're financially involved. And I think your next job is to get your son or daughter to the rink, let them have fun, let them have success, and be their biggest cheerleader. And I think, I look back on when I was playing and I was growing up, my parents didn't play the game. My parents only thing they know from the game is watching thousands of games between my brother and I over the course of years. But I do to a fault. My parents, and I'd say my dad specifically, like he always said I had a good game, and I don't know. He owns a Mason construction company, so he doesn't have. He graduated high school, but he didn't go to college, so he doesn't have like a psychology degree in sports and mental toughness and all this stuff. But he was very optimistic and very positive as a parent. And not that he didn't hold me accountable when he felt like he might have had to, but overall, like I always played well in his eyes. And I think with that mindset, you let your kids be freer, you let them play, you let them enjoy it versus the stress of like being on the bench as a kid and looking in the stands and dad's giving you hand motions, or you get in the car and dad slams the door. And there's like this like tension that you see sometimes between kids and their parents. And like, if I could say anything, I would just say like, you pay the bills, you drive your kid to the his or her events, let them play, let them enjoy it, and kind of like try to stay out of the way as best you can. And I think when we do that, the kids feel less pressure. The kids are going to play more free. The kids are going to have more success. And if you have them working with good people and they have good coaches, like hopefully the coaches are correcting what you might be seeing as a dad. And I would say, and I think if you ask my two boys, who's harder on them, their mother or their father, in most situations, they would pick on my wife as being harder on them. And she comes from a tennis background, so she's got a little bit of different, like one-on-one mindset of how, she was raised with her coaches and stuff, and everything had to be perfect. Versus my background through my parents was about like, great game. That was awesome. Great game. And I never really have asked my dad. I probably should, if like he did it on purpose. He just was like, I didn't know what I was watching. He just like, you worked hard. Like you played good. Like, I don't know. Like, and I think there's too many Monday morning quarterbacks for kids nowadays, and they get in the car and they're analyzing their game and going through it. And it's like, just enjoy the game, enjoy that your kids are being active, and hopefully that, like you said, they have a good coach that's making those corrections on the bench that like you don't need to make in the car ride home. And I would say to a fault, as a player growing up, if you made a big mistake in a game, I know I made the mistake in the game. If I turn the puck over and they go in and score, like I know that. If I'm a goalie and I don't make a save that I feel like I should have made, I know that. So to kind of get hit with that baseball bat again in the car ride home or at home, like usually doesn't quantify to him making that save next time or not turning the puck over. And as humans, like we want to be really good at what we do. And in most situations, kids give you everything they have. They're not trying to make mistakes or trying to not play up to your standards, but pay the bills, drive them to the rink, cheer them on, be their biggest cheerleader, and let their path, their marathon set foot. And it's a long journey, and try to be supportive and not getting in the way of their success.
And take them to dunks after. That's the key. You gotta hit dunks after.
Dunks nowadays, and buy them a fruity drink and let them be happy and keep moving forward. No, but I think that in any sport, like let the kids enjoy it. It should be fun. Like, and I think like if you could have saw my 09 practices 4 or 5 years ago when these kids were a little bit younger and complete knuckleheads, like they would score and celebrate every time. And I'm sure the goalies' dads and parents didn't appreciate that in practice, but like they enjoyed the game, like enjoy the game. And I think for me, it's even if Rivers to flash back, like, do I yell at kids, or correct kids when it needs to be corrected? Yes. But usually it's over a course of like making the same mistake multiple times. Like you got to enjoy this. It's a hard, stressful journey for these kids. And the more support they get from their parents and from their coaches, in my opinion, like the higher they're going to reach as players. And I think you can see that historically with certain NHL coaches and the small window they get of coaching certain teams based on how their vibe is with certain players. And NHLers are no different than 12-year-olds. So just think about that as a parent, as you're going through it, and be your son or daughter's biggest cheerleader and enjoy the moment. And not everyone's going to score every game. Not everyone's going to get a shutout every game. Not everyone's going to play perfect, but I think if they're smiling, they're happy, and they're working hard, like lean on those fundamentals.
Great way to end. Pat, do you have anything else
Absolutely.
before we head out?
In like 4 or 5 years, or I don't know, I don't want to put a number on it, but an X amount of years when you potentially have kids, I don't want to see you banging on the glass and anything else behind the scenes. All right.
I won't need you. My kids are going to be
I
perfect. They're going to
I
make every play.
remember it was, I don't know if it was like the Lynn Jets high school team or St. Mary's, but I remember like some from Lynn, but it was talk of the town like 10 years ago or whatever it was. Some mom and dad at one of the high school games, like climbing over the glass about something happened on the ice. So it was like, I remember like, don't ever do that. like saying to my parents, like, but yeah, no, I think this is a perfect spot to end. We covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we did. We did. Yeah, I always say someday when I have kids, I've watched so many parents. I've covered this level now for almost 2 years. I have no excuse. I can't be a crazy parent. I can't be a crazy coach. I gotta take all this in and be chill with it. So I guess that's gonna be my. I'll remember this conversation.
I mean, we've had a
Um,
lot of firsthand examples of what not to do.
Yes. Oh
Yes.
yeah. I mean, growing up, I had lots of those too. Freddie, you have a weekly summer games that you want to promote, right? That are coming up. I forget. Is it
Well,
a?
trying to get off the ground in Dedham this summer, essentially a high school prep MI Academy League that would skate once a week on Thursday nights in Dedham. We're trying to get four teams of players and make it highly competitive. And um, I guess if you're out there and you're a high school age player and you're looking for a summer league and you're playing at a relatively high level and you want some good competition and exposure and all the other stuff that goes along with it, love to check us out, Boston Elite League. .com. You get more information, or you track down my Dream Big Hockey Stars information directly, and we can connect. And same way, it's we're kind of probably a little bit behind the eight ball of getting it off the ground back in January, but here we are, and we're trying to get some movement on it. And if there's anybody out there that's looking, that's interested, that needs to work on his game and get better in the summer, let me know.
06 through 09, right?
Move 6 through 09, yeah. So essentially high school age players. And that's same like I said, if you're playing at Rivers or Belmont Hill, or you're playing at, Catholic Memorial, like it's open to all high school age kids. And I love to try to get this off the ground and give opportunity for kids to compete.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, Freddie, thank you for joining. It was a pleasure you enlightening us and the listeners on all those things. And Pat, as always, thank you for joining us too. This has been the New England Hockey Journal's RinkWise podcast, produced by David Yaz, a Seamans Media production. You RinkWise listeners, will see you out at the rinks.